Guys, thank you so much for joining me. It's a pinch me moment. I was just explaining how I watched you guys as a child, so this is really special for me. Loved the documentary, really enjoyed it. It's shown in the doco that when you guys started to build momentum in your career, people tried to change you, told you were cringe. What were the conversations that you guys were having with each other to determine, I guess, to go out on your own and stick with your gut and not listen to that? Because that's quite daunting when you're in your infancy.
Yeah, I think with some of the things where they tried to change us, you kind of go, well, do they know more than you? And how much are you prepared to change and still keep your vision? And I think, there was one pilot that was made where we weren't allowed to talk. They were saying, oh, you can't talk to children, which was kind of really what we're all about. So we're just like lip syncing the songs, and they put us in shorts, and it was kind of ridiculous. And we just saw the finished result and said, no, we're not going to do that. And I think that was a fairly big moment where we kind of went, look, we've got our own vision, and let's stick with it. And I think it made us think, well, we know more about performing for children than these people, or we know how to be the Wiggles better than these people. And I think that was a big moment.
And I think too that because we'd already had some degree of success, we had a sort of measure of the fact that what we were doing was resonating with children, which was so important to have that positive reinforcement for our own decision-making process, because everything we learned at university about how to engage with children was proving to be correct. So I think it gave us a bit of confidence to sort of say, look, we think we're on the right path here, let's stick with it.
Watching the documentary, I never realised how deeply you applied your early childhood learnings to the Wiggles. Is that the secret to its success, you think?
I think it is the secret that we come from a developmental approach, and we're child-centred. It means, if you write something for a child, well, you go, what age group are you talking about? If you're writing for babies, well, you know that that's a whole different to a 5-year-old. They've got different skills, and you've got to accommodate for that. So Macquarie University and the Institute of Early Childhood Studies, they gave us the tools to be able to do that. And without the education, we wouldn't have been successful. Successful as in communicating with children.
There's a part in the doco that shows all the celebrities you guys have encountered over the years. Pretty huge names. If you had to pick one highlight encounter, who would it be and why?
Well, for me, it was the wonderful Iron Man karate.
Can't believe his name.
No.
Are you talking about Robert Downey Jr.?
No.
Actual Iron Man?
No.
Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris came to our show, and it was just fantastic. And it was his birthday, and we got Henry the Octopus to sing "Happy Birthday" to Chuck Norris. For me, it was Chuck Norris.
Everyone's dream. That's pretty incredible.
Look, for me, it was Robert De Niro, because that's Taxi Driver and Raging Bull. So that was a real big one for me.
Yeah. Everyone pretty in agreement there?
Yeah, I think, sorry, I was just going to say De Niro, I think was a very powerful moment to meet a legend of the big silver screen.
I think for me, because I'm sort of so into rock and roll, meeting and working with John Fogerty was huge. And he's so humble, and he thanked us for letting him be involved. We recorded 2 songs with him and did videos, and at the end he said, thank you for letting me do
Mick Fleetwood from Fleetwood Mac, the drummer, he came backstage and he's told us that at their sound check that Lindsay Buckingham was singing Toot Toot Chugga Chugga, Big Red Car. And I'd love to hear that. And my parents loved Neil Sedaka, who wrote, Calendar Girl, Happy Birthday, Sweet 16, all these incredible songs, Solitaire. And he came back with his grandchildren. Yeah. And that was unbelievable. So we met a lot of great people just because their children loved the Wiggles.
Well, one thing that you touch on as well is obviously when you're traveling the world together, you're working together, you're exhausted. Sometimes there's some minor clashes, when people are a bit moody, what have you. Was there ever anything behind the scenes that went too far in terms of an argument or something silly that you had to apologise for? Or did you get along for the most part?
Oh, we had occasional spats, but they really got resolved an hour later.
Yeah.
You know,
except in the famous water on the skivvy incident. We still haven't patched that up. But anyway, we'll move on from there.
You can do it now.
Yeah.
Remain
No.
mystery.
No, it's all forgiven.
And obviously, as I said, you're traveling the world. It's all very G-rated. Children's performers performing for children. But you're also living this pretty rock star lifestyle. Did you indulge in a bit of rock star behavior behind the scenes?
In the early days, when we first went to America, except for Murray, he was married, but we were all single guys, but we weren't doing anything outrageous. But we would go out into clubs and things. And
Just for the record, I was married at that point.
oh, you were? Okay, that's okay.
Inside joke here.
No,
No, it's not. No, it's just I mean, we are adults, and we'd have a drink.
And we were touring with Barney, and the people from Barney would go out to clubs with us, and it was crazy. But there's a parallel story, because recently, last couple of years, Miss Elena from Romper Room, her husband was the former, and Mike is now passed away, but the former director of the Western Suburbs Leagues Club. So we would go out watching the West Tigers. I'd be sitting next to Miss Helena. There was Anthony from the Wiggles, and we'd be having a drink, and people thought it was very funny.
Oh my gosh. Now, another thing I love about the doco is you don't shy away from any of the controversies that you've faced, notably Sam's departure from the group. Where would you say that situation is now? Is that all patched up?
Well, it's a funny one, because for the life of me, a story went in about us and how we handled it all, and it wasn't true. So I've never thought that we did anything wrong, and that's why I say don't explain, don't complain. And I'd rather say that, just say, for me, it was not what it was portrayed as, and I could sleep at night.
Yeah, we've always wished Sam well, so
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Perfectly answered. Look, I don't think there's a single children's group the world over that has made media headlines in the way that you guys have. How difficult was it, I guess, balancing your personas, which is children's performers, but also being a mainstream media celebrity? How did you walk that line? Was there times where that was quite difficult to juggle?
Mostly it was fine. Our personas aren't that far removed from who we are. And, especially Jeff and Anthony and I were a bit older when we started too, so we weren't going, we were 20-something and having wild nights out. But
Nor was I, though.
Neither did Greg either. But you know what I mean. And, but also we didn't have this sort of...
I was 20-something, and I wasn't.
That's right.
We relieved that social media wasn't a thing.
Well,
back
there
then.
is that too. And also we've never had paparazzi and things like that.
and in public, we never were in our trademark colours, so we flew under the radar a little bit there.
Yeah. We've seen how the Wiggles have changed over time, and despite... It is. I did notice it immediately. Look, we have seen how the Wiggles have changed over time, and despite having doubters and naysayers, it continues to evolve. Not to suggest anyone is disposable, but I think that it speaks to how evergreen this brand is that you've built. Why the Wiggles?
Well, again, we come from an early childhood perspective and developmental approach. When Emma joined the Wiggles, we got a lot of backlash that a woman is in the Wiggles, but of course we should have had a woman in the Wiggles. So if we had started not so organically, we would have got 2 women, 2 men. Then again, we had an incredible backlash when Emma left, and we brought in, Evie, Zai, Katerina, Lucia, Johnny, Simon, Lockie, and myself still there, but gender balanced and diverse, representative. But we got a big, negative reaction to that. But what was behind it, again, was our audience. We have to reflect our audience. We have to inspire our audience. And so, again, it's successful because that's where we're coming from.
How hard was it when people left? Notably you, Greg, you left, and Emma, just huge. How difficult was it to kind of navigate life after those departures?
For me, with Greg, it was very hard because Greg, this 4 have this magic that you can't manufacture.
Yeah, and I think also Greg's voice is the sound of the Wiggles, really, of our Wiggles anyway, and also it's just that sort of friendship, that bond that we had. You know, we were like brothers, really, and when one of your brothers is gone, it was really, really hard for quite a long time.
Yeah, with Sam and Emma, it wasn't such as big a thing as Greg leaving, because we knew that you can keep going, and you can have other people in the skivvies as long as you come from the child perspective. And another thing adults forget is that for children, it's not only if someone leaves, like, well, there's also Dorothy's still there, Wags is still there, Captain's there, Henry's there, Shirley, Sean, the unicorn. They're all there, or, there are other Wiggles. So it's not like Mick Jagger leaving the Rolling Stones. It is a group, a family. And of course, takes getting used to when someone leaves. But when I go, or when someone else goes, it'll still carry on.
And also the audience regenerates. So I've talked about this before, that I went to see the Wiggles with Emma, and at that kind of height, and I walked through the crowd, and all the parents were going, "It's Murray, it's Murray," and the kids are going, "Who? What?"
Yeah, definitely. Anthony, I have a specific question from you. It's a submission from someone in the office. He watches the Wiggles with his daughter, and he's noticed that, so in some older episodes, we can see your beautiful tooth, and in some of the newer ones, it's been covered up, and we just want to know why.
Yeah, I have a lot of. It's a bit of a serious answer. Years ago, I got bitten by a tick while I was in the army. So I've got what's called Lyme-like disease in Australia, but Lyme disease in America. So what happens is that my jaw gets, the bacteria Bartonella attacks my jaw. So I have teeth work done, and then all of a sudden the implants get, around the implants, the bone gets in. So I don't cover it up. I actually have one guy who gets the implants and they have to get replaced. So at the moment, I've still got the gold, and I'd love to bling up everything, but you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, so it's nothing to do with, I guess, needing to have the shiny white teeth for the Wiggles?
No. And also I've got tattoos, which are covered up. But now I've got this little Scotsman that the legs come through the skivvy sometimes. But none of the other guys, you guys don't have tattoos.
Well, there was, on that, is there anything that you couldn't do because of the Wiggles? I know that the tattoos have been contentious, but was there ever a moment where you're like, probably shouldn't do that? I'm in the Wiggles.
There is. Murray actually was the guiding light years ago when the Wiggles were up there. It was all happening. We got approached by a very famous fast food company to sponsor our tour. And Murray said, rightfully, guys, we should be talking about fruit salad and not.
So was Murray the person who, were you guys considering it and you were like?
I'm the stick in the mud. No, not really. I think.
Can we name the fast food company?
No, I think it was just, maybe I just had a certain concept in my head of what the Wiggles was and what we should do. And I think we all wanted to stay pure to our vision, but it's fairly early days in some respects. So we were still finding our way and thinking, well, what is allowable and what's not? And I think also my children were, I had children, and I probably said, well, it's hard enough for parents to say no to lollies or whatever, without the Wiggles saying, oh, look at these great things. So I just felt there was a responsibility, and I think everyone agreed. They all agreed, yeah. It wasn't like we had an argument about it.
But it's quite enticing, right, when those big companies come to you?
Oh, yeah, because they have a lot of power and money.
We went the other way a couple of years later where we had a cereal. Now, you want to put kids eat cereals, but we wanted to make it as healthy as we could. The trouble is, we went, there was no taste.
It was totally tasteless.
It was
might as well eat the box.
Yeah.
Taking the sugar out of it.
It's not the best endorsement for eating healthy, is it, when it tastes
Yeah,
like that?
It was.
When you watch the documentary, and one thing I loved about it was just your humble beginnings and how nonchalant you all were. I couldn't believe that there was just basically no thought to the colour of the skivvies. It was like, oh, we'll have this one and we'll have this one. Did you ever imagine that you'd be sitting here promoting a documentary about your legacy?
I don't think we had much idea that we'd go beyond putting out that first album and playing a few shows and having some fun. And
I think what you touched on there is the thought aspect of it. We didn't think beyond the early childhood component of it. We didn't think, okay, how are we going to grow this? How are we going to do this in such a way that we can go for 5 years or whatever? We really didn't. It was really about the audience and the children and making sure that whatever we did was good quality. And there were a lot of happy accidents along the way. And I think to Anthony's credit, he might have said, you know, we should go with solid colours on top and black pants. And that was a great idea. And there was a lot of those moments where it wasn't really sat down and thought about, well, what if we do this? And we didn't debate ideas. It was just like, well, why don't we try this? And we tried plenty of things that didn't work as well. And, you know, like Dorothy's question time, you know, you know, but that's part of the beauty of what the Wiggles was about. It was about that organic beginning and the friendship, but that underpinning of early childhood education that shone through every moment.
What are you most proud of?
I'm most proud that it's still going with different people and the fact that it's really diverse and it's really reflecting Australian society as it is. But most of this thing that we did start as like a cottage industry has grown to be such an enduring part of the social fabric of Australia.
I'm proud of the fact that this guy's still doing it. I mean,
I know.
30-something years.
I didn't want to ask about it because I don't want you to stop. I didn't want to shame you into stopping.
No, he won't stop. Oh, there's no shame. We can't shame him into stopping.
You can tell in the doco that they really need you. You've got you bring such genius to the group.
I just love, and I go back to Macquarie Uni, what we learnt there. It just gave us the tools to do it. So, but with these guys still coming in, like Sahai grew up with the Wiggles, John grew up with the Wiggles, the Cheer grew up with the Wiggles, definitely. Katarina's been there for 20 years. And Lockie's feeling like he's been reborn because there's such a great excitement. But when these guys come, we all, including me, I get a little bit starstruck too because you don't see enough of them. And when you hear that voice or that guitar licks or the piano, it's just, you know, wonderful.
Also, I think it's part of the diversity because you've got to have like an older Australian as well.
And I like the fact that we've now normalised representation. What you see is what you can be.
Yeah, now see, Jeff, we grew up, we started the 90s where we didn't even know that term. So Jeff was just like,
I mean, we were just mates. I never actually analysed anything about like being Asian or anything like that. It was never an issue.
The premiere the other day, these two Asian Australian journalists came up and said, Jeff, you being on the television meant so much to us. And so we were doing that then, but we didn't even know it. We didn't. Yeah.
Beautiful answers, guys. Such a privilege to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for what you've done. I've got nieces and nephews now who watch the Wiggles and it's just really surreal for me because I remember loving it so much as a kid as well. So it must be special.
Hi, thanks. I haven't missed you an excellent scene.